Hi, everybody. Today, we begin a slow, gentle journey back through the veils of time to a place where stone and spectacle intertwined, where the roar of crowds rose like a tide under the blazing Roman sun. We will explore what it was truly like to be a spectator at the Rome Colosseum, that vast amphitheater standing proud at the heart of an empire whose echoes still linger in the dust of history. Imagine yourself in ancient Rome, where the Colosseum was not just a building, but a living theater of emotion, drama, and ritual. Here, the air was thick with anticipation, mingled with dust and the sense of food and sweat. As tens of thousands gathered to witness the unfolding of fierce contests, heroic deeds, and moments suspended between life and death. The Colosseum was a place where social orders mingled, where senators rubbed shoulders with common folk, and where the spectacle offered a shared escape from the burdens of daily life. Our tale will slowly unfold the sensory and emotional experience of those who filled the seats, those who came not as participants, but as witnesses, spectators. We will step into their sandals, feel the stone beneath their hands, listen to their murmurs and shouts, and breathe in the anticipation that pulsed through that great arena. Over the coming parts, we'll explore how the crowds gathered, the rhythms of the games, the rituals before the contests, the architecture that shaped the experience, and the subtle interactions between people who were part of something greater than themselves. We will see the spectacle through their eyes, not only the grand battles and gladiatorial combats, but the quiet moments of waiting, of reflection, and of awe. This is a story of presence, a slow, deliberate look into what it meant to be there, amid the roars and the silence, the grandeur and the grit, in a place that was both brutal and breathtaking. So settle in as we begin this tranquil passage into the heart of ancient Rome's greatest stage. The morning of a games day started long before the crowds arrived. Imagine waking early with the city still wrapped in a gentle haze, the coolness before the heat of the day. Merchants set up their stalls near the entrances, selling olives, bread, dried figs, and garum, a pungent fish sauce beloved by Romans. The smell of fresh-baked bread mingled with the distant clang of construction workers making last-minute repairs to the Colosseum's wooden seating areas. As sunlight spread, it illuminated the towering arches, casting long shadows over the uneven cobblestones. People began to trickle in, some strolling slowly, others eager and quick-footed, clutching small tokens or simple painted wooden shields that bore the emblems of favored gladiators or charioteers. Children tugged at their parents' robes, eyes wide with excitement and curiosity, while elderly citizens settled themselves carefully, mindful of the hours ahead. The Colosseum itself was an immense architectural marvel, but more than its size, it was its design that shaped the experience. The tiered seating rose in concentric circles with clear divisions by social rank. Senators and nobles occupied the best seats near the arena, while common citizens filled the higher rows. Yet, despite this hierarchy, the shared anticipation was palpable. The buzz of the crowd, the shifting of thousands of bodies, the collective breath held in waiting, created a powerful sense of unity. The central arena floor, known as the arena itself, was a stage of sand and timber. Underneath lay a complex network of tunnels and elevators, where gladiators, animals, and props waited in the shadows. For the spectators, this subterranean world was a mystery, hidden from view but essential to the magic unfolding above. As the crowd grew, voices rose and fell like waves. Some whispered plans of which contests to watch, others debated the strengths of their favorite fighters. Occasionally, a shout would burst forth, a gambler's cry, or a boastful declaration of loyalty. The atmosphere was charged but patient, attention waiting to be released. Before the spectacle began, there was a formal procession, the Pampa. Gladiators marched through the corridors, adorned with helmets and armor, carrying their weapons. Priests and officials followed, offering prayers and sacrifices to the gods, asking for protection and favor. This ritual reminded spectators that the games were not mere entertainment, but deeply woven into religious and cultural life. The emperor or his representative often appeared, his presence both a political statement and a spectacle in itself. His arrival was met with cheers and bows, a moment that underscored the grand scale of the event. His box was decorated richly, separated from the crowd but visible to all, a reminder of Rome's power and order. As the first contest was announced, a hush fell over the crowd. The gladiators entered the arena, moving with purpose and grace despite the tension of impending combat. Their appearance, their stance, and even their breathing became part of the performance. Spectators leaned forward, the light catching the glint of weapons and armor, the muscles flexing beneath scarred skin. The first clash was more than a fight. It was a dance of life and death, skill and strategy. The crowd gasped, cheered, and sometimes fell silent in awe or shock. Emotions ran high, and though many had seen such spectacles before, each battle was unique, each outcome uncertain. Between combats, the arena might host displays of exotic animals, mythological reenactments, or theatrical performances. These interludes gave the crowd moments to breathe, to marvel at the variety and creativity of Roman spectacle before plunging back into the drama. As the sun moved across the sky, the noise of the crowd became a living thing, sometimes a roar, sometimes a murmur, sometimes a collective sigh. Food vendors circled, selling dried fruits, nuts, and wine in goatskin bags. Children played quietly, their energy spent or channeled into quiet games. The day stretched on, blending spectacle with socializing, awe with relaxation. The Colosseum was a place of contrasts, brutal violence balanced by moments of tenderness, the harshness of combat softened by ritual and performance. When the sun finally began to dip low, casting a golden glow over the stone, the final contest drew near. The energy in the crowd shifted, some faces tired, some gleaming with excitement. The end of the games was near, and the decision of mercy or death hung heavily in the air, carried by the subtle gestures of the editor, the official who oversaw the fights. And so, as evening settled and the shadows grew long, the crowd slowly began to disperse, their voices quieter now, their footsteps slower. They carried with them the memory of the day, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, etched into their minds like the marks on the stone seats they had just left behind. This was not just entertainment. It was a ritual of community, a performance of power, a moment of shared humanity in the vast expanse of Rome. Being a spectator at the Colosseum was to be part of something immense, to witness life's fragility and glory played out in the sand beneath the sky. And with that, our first gentle step into this ancient world ends. We will continue to walk this path together, discovering more of the sights, sounds, and souls of the Colosseum in the parts to come. The morning light had long since climbed higher over Rome, spilling warmth and clarity over the massive structure of the Colosseum. Inside, the crowd had settled into a rhythm, their bodies pressed against the cool stone benches, eyes turning repeatedly toward the vast arena where all the action was about to unfold. The sheer scale of the amphitheater, its curves and arches seeming to rise endlessly, was humbling. From where the spectators sat, the arena floor seemed a world apart, a place of spectacle and danger, sealed off by the tall wooden barrier and the rows of eager faces surrounding it. One might imagine that the experience of watching the games was simply about the fights themselves, but to those present, it was far more intricate and textured. Time seemed to stretch and bend in this place, flowing in sync with the movements of the crowd and the unfolding drama below. There was a pulse, a steady heartbeat in the murmurs and shouts, in the shifting weight of thousands of bodies leaning forward or reclining back, hands clapping or pointing. Some spectators arrived in groups drawn by friendship or family ties, while others came alone, lost in the flow of the masses. Conversations rose and fell like waves, sometimes soft and intimate, sometimes loud and boisterous. The language was thick with Roman slang, punctuated by laughter, gasps, and the occasional curse. The faces around you ranged from the rough hands of merchants to the polished togas of senators, the worn robes of slaves to the bright clothes of children. This mixture of classes, all gathered for a shared purpose, created an electric atmosphere, a microcosm of Roman society itself. Food played a surprisingly important role in the experience. Vendors, young boys darting through the aisles or older men stationed near the entrances, offered morsels of bread, olives, salted fish, and dried fruits. The scent of roasted chestnuts sometimes drifted through the air, mingling with the sharper tang of spiced wine sold in small clay cups. Eating while watching was both a comfort and a distraction, a way to pass the long hours and share small moments of pleasure amid the tension of the games. The spectators were not mere passive onlookers. Their engagement shaped the entire event. They cheered loudly for favored gladiators, their voices rising in chants that echoed off the stone walls. Some had personal stakes, wagers placed discreetly, alliances formed and broken with every match. Others watched with a quiet, intense fascination, eyes never leaving the movements below, hearts pounding with the rhythm of the combat. What many outside the arena would not realize was how deeply ritualized and choreographed much of the spectacle was. Gladiators were not simply thrown into brutal fights at random. Their appearances and matchups were planned, each designed to evoke particular emotions and themes. The editor, a figure of great influence, shaped the day's contests to build tension and drama, like a playwright crafting scenes for maximum effect. Before the games, the arena itself underwent transformation. Workers spread fresh sand over the floor, smoothing it to a fine, even surface that would soak up blood and mark footsteps. Beneath the sand, intricate mechanisms lay hidden, trapdoors and lifts that could raise cages of wild beasts or lower platforms carrying combatants into the light. The arena was a stage both brutal and wondrous, a place where art and violence danced in uneasy balance. As the sun rose toward midday, the procession of gladiators began. Their entrance was a spectacle of its own. Clad in armor that gleamed under the sun, each fighter carried weapons carefully chosen to suit their style and role. Some bore heavy shields and short swords, while others wielded tridents and nets, moving with a grace that belied the deadly purpose behind their steps. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding, shouting encouragement or jeers, caught up in the pageantry. Behind the gladiators, the officials and priests appeared, adding solemnity to the occasion. Their presence reminded all that the games were more than mere entertainment. They were acts of devotion, offerings to the gods and affirmations of Rome's power. Ritual prayers were whispered, small sacrifices made, and the crowd, caught in this mix of reverence and excitement, often responded with respectful silence or murmured prayers of their own. The opening combat began with a measured intensity. Each movement was watched closely. The parry of a sword, the dodge of a shield, the grit in a gladiator's eyes. The crowd's emotions rose and fell in waves, from elation at a clever move to shock at a sudden wound. The sounds of the fight, the clash of metal, the thud of blows, the breathy grunts, were amplified by the arena's architecture, filling the air and the hearts of those watching. What made the experience so unforgettable was the profound sense of connection between the fighters and their audience. The gladiators were both warriors and performers, aware of the crowd's gaze, drawing strength from its energy. The spectators, in turn, were swept up in a story that was at once deeply personal and universally human, a story of courage, struggle, and survival. In moments of respite between battles, the crowd would shift and murmur, discussing what they had seen, making predictions about the next fight, or simply basking in the shared experience. Some would seek shade under the arcades, others would find new friends in the crowd, and many would simply close their eyes for a moment, feeling the sun's warmth and the hum of the living Colosseum around them. The architecture itself influenced every sensation. The coolness of the shaded seating areas, the rough texture of the stone beneath fingertips, the echoes of voices bouncing off the curved walls. The sun's arc through the sky painted changing patterns of light and shadow across the arena floor and the faces of those watching. These subtle shifts marked the passing of time and deepened the immersive quality of the experience. As the day wore on, the contest grew more intense, the stakes higher. Spectators found themselves caught between awe and anxiety, revelry and solemnity. They whispered prayers to their gods, applauded feats of bravery, and at times held their breath, fearing the worst. The games were a mirror of life itself, with moments of triumph shadowed by the ever-present specter of death. Yet even in this atmosphere of tension, there were moments of kindness and camaraderie. Gladiators sometimes exchanged respectful nods with the crowd, children waved tiny banners, and strangers shared food and drink. The Colosseum was not just a place of conflict, but a gathering space where people forged fleeting yet powerful bonds. As the sun dipped lower in the sky and the shadows stretched long, the mood began to shift again, an awareness that the day was nearing its end. The crowd, once restless and loud, began to settle, preparing to carry the memory of what they had witnessed back into the city's bustling streets and quiet homes. The Colosseum, momentarily emptied of its roaring masses, stood as a silent sentinel, waiting to hold new stories, new dramas, and new faces. This was the world of the Roman spectator, alive, vibrant, and filled with contrasts. It was a world where every sound, every glance, every breath mattered, a world that wove together danger and delight, tradition and transformation. To be there was to be part of something greater than oneself, a shared ritual that transcended time. And so the day at the Colosseum unfolded, a slow, unfolding tapestry of sensation, emotion, and human connection, wrapped in stone and sunlight, etched into the memory of those who lived it. As the sun climbed steadily toward its zenith, the heat began to settle deeply into the stone walls of the Colosseum. The air shimmered slightly, carrying the scents and sounds that had become familiar to the gathering crowd. The noises of the city faded behind the roar of thousands, all eyes fixed on the arena floor, where the next chapter of spectacle was about to unfold. For the spectators, this was a moment of heightened anticipation, not simply because a new contest was starting, but because the rhythm of the games had established a pattern. Moments of tension, followed by release, bursts of action punctuated by pauses of reflection. It was as though time itself was measured by the ebb and flow of the contests. In the shaded tiers, groups of friends leaned toward each other, whispering predictions and sharing tales of past games. The elders recounted stories of legendary gladiators, their voices rich with nostalgia and reverence, while children listened wide-eyed, absorbing the myths and histories that made the spectacle more than just blood and sand. These stories tied the present moment to a broader tapestry of Roman identity, of valor and sacrifice passed from generation to generation. At the same time, a subtle, almost imperceptible tension wove through the crowd. Not all who came were mere observers. Many had stakes in the outcome. Wagers exchanged hands, coins quietly passed between fingers, and favorite champions were cheered with fervor or jeered with bitter disappointment. This undercurrent of gambling added a layer of complexity to the experience, transforming the games into more than public entertainment. They became a stage where fortune and fate were openly contested. The architecture of the Colosseum itself seemed to breathe with the crowd, the curved walls and vaulted arches capturing sound and amplifying it in waves. Voices overlapped, laughter echoed, and the sharp cries of hawkers punctuated the murmurs, creating a symphony unique to this place. The stone beneath was worn smooth in places, testament to countless feet that had gathered here over generations, each adding their presence to the memory etched into the very fabric of the building. As the next combatants stepped into the arena, a hush settled. These fighters carried with them stories written in scars and sweat, their faces a blend of steely focus and quiet determination. Each had trained for years, honing skills not just of strength but of endurance and strategy. Their movements, measured and deliberate, were a dance as much as a fight, a choreography that captivated and commanded the crowd's full attention. Spectators often found themselves drawn not just to the physicality of the battle, but to the personalities unfolding within it. The bravery of one gladiator, the cunning of another, the moments of hesitation or boldness, all became threads in a narrative woven in real time. Some whispered encouragement, others shouted commands or curses, their voices mingling in a chorus of human emotion. Between bouts, the arena sometimes transformed. Exotic animals, lions, tigers, and elephants, were paraded or set loose in controlled hunts, their presence evoking the vastness of the empire and the exotic lands it encompassed. These animals stirred a mix of awe and fear, their roars and movements adding a wild, unpredictable element to the carefully managed spectacle. The variety of performances provided a rhythm to the day, a balance of tension and release that kept the crowd engaged and emotionally invested. When the animals had made their exit, musicians might enter, filling the air with the haunting melodies of flutes and lyres, their notes weaving through the chatter and cheers. Dancers sometimes performed, their movements graceful and deliberate, offering moments of beauty and calm between the bursts of violence. All the while, the sun journeyed across the sky, shifting light and shadow across the tiers of spectators and the arena floor. The play of sunlight on armor and sand created fleeting patterns, bright flashes followed by deep cooling shadows that added a visual poetry to the unfolding drama. The temperature rose, the heat pressing down on skin and stone alike, and some spectators sought relief under the colonnades or with damp cloths offered by vendors. Despite the intensity of the day's events, moments of quiet reflection emerged among the crowd. Some sat back, eyes half closed, absorbing the atmosphere in a contemplative hush. Others leaned forward, caught in the collective breath held in suspense, hearts beating in unison with the unfolding scene. The experience of being a spectator at the Colosseum was a mosaic of these sensations: sound and silence, light and shadow, excitement and calm. It was a place where the everyday concerns of life fell away, replaced by the shared pulse of anticipation and the vivid spectacle playing out in the sand below. For many, this communal experience offered something beyond mere entertainment. It was a moment of connection to each other, to the city, and to the larger world beyond Rome's walls. The games were a reminder of the empire's power and reach, but also of the fragile humanity at its core. As afternoon deepened, the contest grew more intense. Fighters who had survived earlier battles now faced each other with heightened skill and determination. The crowd's energy shifted accordingly. Cheers grew louder, breaths sharper, the emotional stakes climbing with every parry and thrust. Spectators could sense the unspoken questions hanging in the air. Who would emerge victorious? Who would fall? What mercy would the editor show? This last question, of mercy, was a potent one, carrying weight beyond the immediate moment. The editor's decisions reflected not only the fates of the gladiators, but the values and moods of the crowd itself. A thumb raised or lowered could mean life or death, forgiveness or finality. The tension around these gestures was palpable, the crowd leaning in as if to catch every subtle movement. Outside the arena, life continued in the background. The calls of merchants, the laughter of children playing near the entrance, the distant sounds of Rome's bustling streets. But within the Colosseum, time seemed suspended, concentrated into these shared moments of awe, fear, and hope. The spectators' gaze was both outward and inward, taking in the spectacle before them and reflecting on the fragile line between survival and loss. The fights were brutal, yes, but they also embodied ideals of courage, honor, and resilience that resonated deeply with those watching. As shadows lengthened and the sun dipped lower, the crowd's energy slowly shifted from sharp anticipation to a quieter reverence. The day's stories were coming to a close, but their impact lingered, etched into the faces of those who had witnessed them, carried home in whispered retellings and shared memories. To be a spectator at the Colosseum was to live fully in the moment, to feel the weight of history pressing lightly on one's shoulders, to share in a ritual that was ancient yet immediate. It was to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, from exhilaration to sorrow, all set against the timeless stone and sky. And as the crowds prepared to depart, their footsteps echoing softly against the arches and corridors, the Colosseum itself seemed to settle, holding the day's echoes gently within its walls. It waited, silent and patient, for the next gathering, the next story to be told in sand and blood and light. As the afternoon waned and the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, a subtle shift settled over the Colosseum. The intensity of the day's earlier clashes gave way to a more reflective atmosphere, as if the massive stone structure itself was breathing, slowing its pulse after hours of roaring crowds and fierce contests. The light softened, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the sandy arena floor, blurring the sharp outlines of armor and weapons into gentle shapes. For the spectators still seated in the vast tiers, this was a time to catch their breath, to let their minds wander as the games entered a quieter, more ritualized phase. The bustle of vendors slowed, the cries of hawkers softened, and the crowd's volume dipped into murmurs and whispers. The energy that had crackled like lightning throughout the day now folded into a gentle hum, the collective heartbeat of thousands calming as they sat back to watch what came next. Many in the audience found themselves drawn not just to the spectacle itself, but to the subtle interplay of light, sound, and movement within the arena. The golden sun touched the sand with a warm glow, making the dust rise in soft clouds as footsteps shifted and weapons clinked faintly into the distance. It was as if the arena transformed into a stage not only for combat but for moments of contemplation, a place where the line between life and death was marked not only by action but by the stillness in between. In these moments, the human drama beneath the armor became more visible. Faces, sweat-streaked and focused during battle, now relaxed into something more vulnerable. Gladiators, once fierce and unyielding, exchanged glances, sometimes respectful nods, sometimes subtle gestures of exhaustion or determination. The crowd, attuned to these signals, responded with a mixture of empathy and awe, recognizing the shared humanity behind the spectacle. The rituals that accompanied the games took on a deeper significance as well. Priests moved solemnly around the arena's edges, offering prayers and performing small sacrifices to the gods. Their chants, low and rhythmic, wrapped around the crowd like a soft veil, reminding all present of the sacred dimension that underscored even the most brutal contests. These moments of religious observance grounded the event in tradition, connecting the lives of those in the Colosseum to the divine and eternal. Between the bouts, smaller entertainments often took place, designed not just to amuse, but to evoke reflection. Poets recited verses that praised courage and lamented loss. Musicians played haunting melodies on lyres and flutes, their notes weaving through the murmurs of the crowd like threads of silver. Dancers moved gracefully, their slow, deliberate motions offering a contrast to the violence of the arena and providing a moment of aesthetic beauty that softened the day's harsh edges. For many spectators, these interludes were a respite, a time to savor the layered complexity of the event. The games were not just about blood and combat. They were a form of storytelling, a ritual performance where every gesture and sound carried meaning. The audience's role was both active and contemplative. They shouted and cheered, yes, but they also listened, watched, and felt deeply. Children, whose energy had waned under the afternoon heat, now sat quietly beside their parents or older siblings, eyes wide but calm, absorbing the spectacle with a mixture of awe and fatigue. Elders leaned back on their seats, some closing their eyes briefly, others murmuring prayers or quietly discussing the day's highlights. Friends and strangers shared small tokens, bits of bread, sips of wine, creating fleeting connections in the shared space. As the sun lowered further, the shadows deepened and the colors of the arena shifted. The pale gold of midday gave way to richer amber and then to the soft purple hues of evening. This changing light transformed the Colosseum once again, wrapping the stone in warmth and mystery, highlighting the arches and corridors with a glowing softness. This time of day was special. It invited quiet reflection on what had been witnessed and what was yet to come. The crowd grew more subdued, the earlier clamor fading into a gentle murmur as anticipation mingled with fatigue. The day's contests, with their bursts of violence and valor, had stirred powerful emotions: excitement, fear, admiration, sorrow. And now those feelings settled into a deeper, more lasting impression. The architecture of the Colosseum played a role in this transition. The stone walls, which had absorbed the noise and light throughout the day, seemed to hold the fading echoes gently, offering a sense of permanence amid the fleeting moments of the games. The curved tiers, now partly shrouded in shadow, formed a protective embrace around the arena, containing the shared experience like a living memory. The people in the crowd, bound by the day's events, felt a sense of communal belonging. They had witnessed struggles that spoke to the essence of human courage and frailty. They had cheered for heroes and mourned losses. They had participated in a ritual that connected them not only to each other, but to the vast expanse of Roman history and tradition. As twilight deepened, some spectators began to rise, stretching tired limbs and preparing to leave. Yet many lingered, reluctant to break the spell of the day, savoring the last moments of the spectacle as dusk settled over the city. The air cooled, carrying the faint scents of evening flowers and distant fires, blending with the earthy smell of sand and stone. Conversations grew softer, words spoken in low tones as the crowd began to disperse slowly. The gentle rustling of robes and the quiet footsteps of departing spectators became part of the evening soundscape, mingling with the calls of night birds and the distant murmur of the city coming alive under the stars. For those remaining, the Colosseum held a different kind of magic now. a space where the day's stories had been told, where echoes of courage and loss lingered in the air. It was a place suspended between past and present, between the brutal and the beautiful, a sacred stage where human drama unfolded beneath the vast Roman sky. This twilight hour was a time of transition, not just for the crowd, but for the Colosseum itself. As darkness deepened, the stone giant settled into quietude, its secrets held safely within its walls until the next gathering, when light and life would return once more. And so the experience of being a spectator at the Colosseum revealed itself not only in the roar of combat, but in these softer, quieter moments, the interplay of light and shadow, the mingling of voices, the shared silence before and after the spectacle. It was a world rich in sensation and meaning, inviting all who were present to lose themselves, even briefly, in the rhythms of an ancient and enduring tradition. As evening deepened into night, the Colosseum transformed once again, shifting from a place of vibrant spectacle to one of quiet reverence and lingering impressions. The crowd had thinned, leaving behind only the faint echoes of footsteps and murmurs, and the vast stone amphitheater seemed to exhale, settling into stillness beneath the vast star-strewn sky of Rome. For those who remained, the sense of connection forged over the day's events held strong. They lingered in small clusters, voices low and reflective, sharing stories of the contest they had witnessed, of the skill and bravery of the gladiators, and of the moments that had stirred their hearts. These conversations were more than casual recountings. They were acts of communal memory, weaving the day's experiences into the fabric of their lives. The night air carried a gentle chill, a welcome relief after the sun's long heat. Scattered vendors still moved through the stone corridors, offering the last remnants of food and drink to those not yet ready to depart. The soft glow of oil lamps cast flickering shadows along the arches, giving the Colosseum a mysterious, almost sacred quality. This interplay of light and darkness invited contemplation, turning the monumental structure into a quiet sanctuary of memory and reflection. In the quiet, the spectators' thoughts often turned inward, touched by the day's emotional journey. The raw intensity of the fights, the moments of mercy or defeat, the fleeting glimmers of hope and despair, all lingered like shadows in the mind. It was as if the arena's sands held not only the imprint of physical footsteps, but the traces of human spirit, etched invisibly into the very earth. The architecture around them seemed to listen, its stones ancient witnesses to countless dramas played out over centuries. The grand arches rose like silent sentinels, the tiered seating now empty and shadowed, yet somehow still vibrant with the energy of those who had once filled it. The Colosseum was both a monument to power and a vessel of stories, holding within its walls the echoes of joy, sorrow, triumph, and loss. As the night deepened, some spectators found themselves drawn to the entrances and exits, where the city beyond beckoned with its promise of rest and renewal. Others stayed a little longer, reluctant to break the spell, finding comfort in the presence of fellow witnesses and the shared experience that bound them together. Here, under the watchful gaze of the moon and stars, the boundaries between past and present, between spectacle and reality, blurred. For many, the memories of the day's events would be carried forward into dreams, their minds replaying the sounds and images of the arena, the clash of weapons, the roar of the crowd, the poignant moments of silence. These impressions became part of their inner landscape, shaping their understanding of courage, fate, and the human condition. In this way, the role of the spectator extended far beyond the hours spent in the Colosseum. They became bearers of stories, keepers of memory, and participants in a ritual that transcended the immediate spectacle. Through their presence and attention, the games acquired meaning and resonance, transforming from mere combat into a shared act of cultural expression. As dawn approached, the Colosseum stood quiet and majestic, awaiting the return of light and life. The stone walls, warmed by the day's sun and cooled by the night's breeze, held the lingering breath of the crowd, ready to welcome new spectators and new stories. The cycle of anticipation and reflection, of excitement and calm, would begin again, weaving the fabric of Roman life ever onward. Thus, the experience of being a spectator at the Colosseum was not confined to the moments of spectacle alone. It was a journey of senses and emotions, of community and solitude, of light and shadow. It was a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary met, a timeless stage where human stories unfolded beneath the vast Roman sky, inviting all who gathered to witness, to feel, and to remember. With the arrival of a new day, the Colosseum began to stir once more, awakening from its nocturnal quietude to prepare for the rituals and spectacles that would soon unfold. The early morning air was cool and crisp, carrying the sense of dew-soaked earth mingled with the faint aroma of nearby bakeries and markets beginning their daily bustle. The rising sun cast gentle rays through the arches, painting the ancient stone with warm hues that softened its imposing grandeur. For the spectators who arrived early, this was a moment filled with anticipation tinged by a peaceful calm. The city of Rome around them was slowly coming alive, the distant sounds of carts on cobblestones, merchants calling out their wares, and the laughter of children spilling into the streets. But within the Colosseum, there was a distinct stillness, a pause before the stirring storm of excitement that would sweep through later in the day. The vast amphitheater, with its tiers of seating rising like concentric rings of stone, felt almost sacred in this early light. The quiet allowed the spectators to appreciate the scale and craftsmanship of the place, from the intricate network of corridors and stairways to the finely chiseled reliefs decorating its walls. Each stone seemed to hold a story, and in these moments of tranquility, those stories whispered softly to those who would listen. Some early arrivals chose to wander slowly along the outer corridors, touching the cool marble balustrades or leaning against the worn steps. There was a deep sense of connection, not only to the present moment, but to the countless souls who had walked these paths before. Fathers lifted small children to see over the railings, sharing tales of gladiators and emperors, while older citizens exchanged knowing glances, their memories stretching back through many games witnessed. As the sun climbed higher, the bustle increased. Vendors began to set up their stalls again, arranging baskets of fresh bread, olives, dried figs, and cheeses, their voices rising in lively calls to attract customers. The scent of roasted meats and spiced wine mingled with the crisp morning air, tempting those gathering to prepare for the long hours ahead. Children darted through the crowds, their laughter adding lightness to the growing hum of conversation. Slowly, the seating areas filled, and the once peaceful Colosseum became a living organism, its vast stone lungs inhaling the energy of thousands. The social dynamics played out anew. Nobles and senators settled into their privileged places, their togas spotless and their faces composed, while common citizens jostled for the best spots they could claim, sharing space with merchants, artisans, and slaves granted the rare freedom to attend. The excitement of the day began to build, layer upon layer, as murmurs turned to shouts and applause. Friends greeted each other warmly, strangers exchanged smiles, and the collective sense of anticipation grew palpable. The crowd was diverse but united, bound by the shared ritual about to begin. Before the games commenced, a procession wound through the corridors and into the arena itself. Musicians played horns and drums, their rhythms steady and commanding. Gladiators, clad in gleaming armor and bearing weapons carefully polished, marched in disciplined formation. Priests carrying incense and sacred emblems followed, their presence a reminder of the divine blessing that underpinned the day's events. The procession moved with purpose, a visual and auditory spectacle that heightened the crowd's excitement. Spectators rose to their feet, applauding and cheering, their voices mingling in a powerful chorus that echoed against the stone walls. The emperor's arrival was awaited with particular fervor, his presence a symbol of Rome's power and unity, his gaze sweeping the crowd with practiced authority. Once the pompa had passed and the opening ceremonies concluded, the games officially began. The first contests were often carefully chosen to set the tone, sometimes involving less lethal combatants, other times showcasing exotic beasts, or staged hunts that thrilled and astonished. These opening spectacles allowed the crowd to acclimate, their cheers rising in waves as the arena's energy quickened. Throughout the day, the crowd's emotions would ebb and flow with the contests. Moments of fierce combat were balanced by displays of skill and pageantry, creating a rhythm that sustained attention and excitement over many hours. Vendors continued to circulate, offering sustenance and drink, while friends shared stories and laughter in the shade. In these long hours, the Colosseum became a place where time stretched and contracted. The boundaries between social classes softened as all were drawn together by the spectacle, the thrill, and the shared humanity of the games. The noises of the city outside faded, replaced by the pulsating energy of the crowd and the life of the arena. As the sun reached its zenith and began its slow descent, shadows shifted across the seating tiers and the arena floor. The light changed subtly, painting faces and armor in a golden glow that seemed almost otherworldly. The spectacles that followed grew in intensity, drawing the crowd deeper into the unfolding drama. For those present, being a spectator at the Colosseum was not simply about watching fights. It was about feeling the collective heartbeat of the city, about participating in a ritual that celebrated courage, endurance, and the complex interplay of fate and choice. It was about moments of connection between strangers and friends, between the past and the present, between the mortal and the divine. And so the day in the Colosseum moved forward, each moment layered with meaning, each breath heavy with anticipation, as the great amphitheater held its audience captive beneath the Roman sun. As the afternoon sun reached its zenith, the Colosseum pulsed with a life all its own, a sea of faces, voices, and movements woven into a tapestry of anticipation and wonder. The arena itself lay bathed in brilliant light, its golden sand glowing like a stage set for the unfolding drama. The spectators, settled firmly in their stone seats, shared a collective breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold, the next story to be told beneath the wide Roman sky. The architecture of the amphitheater shaped the experience in subtle but profound ways. The elliptical design ensured that every shout, every cry, every clash of steel reverberated clearly throughout the space. The stone tiers acted like giant acoustics, capturing sound and sending it rippling in waves, so that even those seated high above could feel the pulse of the crowd's excitement. The geometry of the Colosseum was not only a marvel of engineering, but an instrument of emotion, designed to draw spectators deeper into the spectacle. Across the tiers, the social fabric of Rome was on full display. Senators and patricians, draped in rich togas, sat closest to the arena, their expressions measured, often hidden behind fans or held in quiet contemplation. Nearby, equestrians and wealthy merchants filled the next rings, their conversations punctuated by laughter or sharp observations on the skill of the fighters. The common citizens, artisans, and laborers packed the higher tiers, their faces alive with unrestrained enthusiasm, their cheers loudest and most persistent. This mingling of classes created a unique atmosphere, a democratic cacophony where all were united by the shared experience, even as social boundaries remained clear. For a few hours, the Colosseum became a great equalizer, a place where the drama on the sand bridged divides and connected hearts. As the crowd watched, the next event began, a bout between two seasoned gladiators known for their contrasting styles. One was a heavily armored Murmillo, his large shield gleaming in the sunlight and his helmet adorned with a striking crest. The other was a nimble Retiarius, wielding a trident and a weighted net, moving with a grace that belied the lethal intent beneath. The crowd's murmur rose into a chorus of cheers and gasps as the combatants circled each other, each waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The fight was a careful dance, feints and parries, sudden lunges and evasive steps. The Murmillo pressed forward with steady strength, while the Retiarius darted around, seeking to ensnare his opponent in the net. Spectators leaned forward, eyes sharp, hearts pounding, caught in the rhythm of the battle. The tension was palpable, a delicate balance between skill and chance. Spectators shouted encouragement and warnings, some waving banners or small tokens bearing the colors of favored fighters. Children sat wide-eyed, gripping their parents' hands, while elders nodded in appreciation of the gladiators' technique and bravery. The crowd was not merely watching, it was participating, its energy fueling the combatants as much as the sun fueled the arena. The clash continued, a vivid display of human endurance and strategy, until finally, after a tense exchange, the Retiarius managed to entangle the Murmillo's shield with his net. The crowd erupted, voices crashing like waves as the Retiarius pressed his advantage. But the Murmillo fought back fiercely, breaking free with a powerful strike. The moment hung suspended, breath held in collective suspense. The editor, seated in a place of honor, observed intently, his hand poised for the decisive gesture. Around him, the crowd's energy swelled, awaiting the signal that would determine fate, life or death, mercy or finality. The gladiators themselves locked eyes, understanding that their fate rested not only on skill, but on the will of the people and the whim of the official. The tension released with a thumbs up, a sign of mercy, and the Murmillo rose, breathing heavily but alive. Cheers flooded the Colosseum, with voices blending in a jubilant chorus of relief and admiration. The defeated gladiator bowed, acknowledging both the crowd and his opponent, the ritual of respect that framed even the most brutal contests. Following the fight, the arena shifted. Exotic animals, lions with golden manes, massive bears, and agile leopards were led into the space, their presence a reminder of the Empire's vast reach and power over nature. The crowd roared as the beasts prowled and paraded, their wildness contained yet thrilling. Some spectators clutched small charms or whispered prayers, hoping for protection or favor. The animal displays provided a contrast to human combat, a reminder of raw nature's force and beauty, set against the controlled chaos of gladiatorial skill. These moments allowed the crowd a brief respite from the tension, a chance to marvel and breathe. Amidst the spectacle, vendors wove through the crowd, calling out their wares: figs, nuts, bread, and wine in small, skin-wrapped containers. Their cries added a lively cadence to the day's unfolding narrative, while groups of friends shared food and drink, their laughter a gentle undercurrent beneath the roar. As the sun edged lower in the sky, shadows grew longer, softening the harsh lines of armor and weapons. The changing light deepened the atmosphere, bathing faces in a warm glow that seemed to draw out the emotional contours of the day. The thrill of victory, the weight of loss, the bonds of shared experience. The Colosseum was more than a place. It was a living theater, where every shout, every movement, every heartbeat was part of a grand human drama. For the spectators, this was not merely a pastime, but a profound engagement with the cycle of life and death, courage and fate, order and chaos. Here, under the expansive Roman sky, the stories of men and beasts unfolded in sand and sunlight, weaving together into a tapestry of sound and emotion that would linger long after the stones had cooled and the crowds had dispersed. As the afternoon light softened and the sun began its gradual descent, a hush seemed to settle briefly over the Colosseum, a pause in the relentless energy of the day. The crowd shifted in their seats, faces flushed with excitement or tension, their eyes fixed once more on the arena where new dramas were about to unfold. The air was thick with anticipation, mingling with the faint sense of dust, sweat, and the lingering aroma of roasted meats from nearby vendors. The spectacle had entered a different phase, one that combined spectacle with ritual, violence with ceremony. Now and then, the clang of metal on metal echoed through the amphitheater as gladiators tested their weapons or adjusted their armor behind the wooden barriers. From the corridors beneath the arena, muffled voices and footsteps signaled the next combatants preparing to enter the stage. These moments of behind-the-scenes activity added to the sense of mystery and tension that rippled through the crowd. Among the spectators, eyes flickered between the arena floor and the hidden entrances. Curiosity sharpened by the knowledge that every moment held the potential for surprise, whether in the form of an unexpected challenger, a sudden shift in the battle, or the dramatic entrance of exotic beasts. The Colosseum was alive with possibility, its stone walls seeming to hum with the energy of countless stories waiting to be told. The social dynamics of the crowd played out in subtle ways. Groups of friends whispered opinions on the gladiators' chances, while solitary spectators sat lost in thought, their gaze distant yet focused. The presence of women and children in the audience added layers of complexity. Some watched with wide-eyed wonder, others with quiet apprehension, all bound by the shared experience of the games. As the next contest commenced, the rhythm of the arena quickened. Two gladiators entered the sand, their movements deliberate and measured, the glint of their armor catching the last rays of sunlight. They represented contrasting schools of combat, one a heavily armored secutor, shield raised and sword ready, the other a nimble, lightly armored threx, wielding a curved sword and small shield. Their styles spoke of different traditions, different philosophies of battle. The crowd leaned forward, the the murmurs rising into cheers as the fighters circled each other, the tension building like a coiled spring. Each strike and parry was a testament to years of training, to discipline and willpower sharpened by the constant presence of danger. The gladiators moved with a mixture of caution and aggression, aware that every gesture was both a physical act and a performance for the watching thousands. In the stands, emotions ran high. Some spectators shouted encouragement or advice, their voices blending into a sea of sound that washed over the arena. Others watched in silent fascination, their breaths held tight as the contest unfolded. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed and trembling with excitement, while older citizens nodded with respect, recognizing the skill and bravery on display. The fight was intense but controlled, a dance of strength and strategy. The secutor pressed forward with steady blows, his shield absorbing the sharp strikes of the Threx, who responded with quick, darting attacks designed to exploit openings. The audience was enraptured, the ebb and flow of the battle reflecting deeper themes of resilience, courage, and fate. Suddenly, a misstep, an exposed flank, and the secutor seized the moment, delivering a precise strike that sent his opponent stumbling. The crowd gasped, the tension breaking into a roar as the outcome seemed sealed. Yet the Thrax, though wounded, refused to yield, raising his shield in defiance and meeting the challenge with fierce determination. The editor's gaze was sharp, his hand ready to signal the verdict. The crowd's breath caught collectively, the weight of the moment pressing down like the stone walls surrounding them. Then, with a decisive gesture, mercy was granted, a silent acknowledgement of bravery and the will to survive. Cheers erupted, the crowd celebrating both the skill and the compassion shown. As the gladiators exited the arena, the mood shifted. Vendors resumed their rounds, hawking wine and snacks, while spectators stretched tired limbs and exchanged animated commentary. The games continued, each event layered with meaning, each moment a thread in the intricate fabric of Roman life. Amidst the noise and movement, moments of quiet reflection surfaced. Some spectators looked skyward, tracing the deepening blue above the arches, while others shared whispered prayers or simple gratitude for having witnessed the day's dramas. The Colosseum was more than a site of combat. It was a space of connection, of shared humanity woven into the heart of the empire. As the afternoon faded toward evening, the amphitheater's light softened further, shadows lengthening and deepening. The sun's final rays painted the stone in hues of gold and rose, bathing the crowd in a warm glow that softened the edges of the day's intensity. It was a time for reverence as much as celebration, a pause before the final acts of the spectacle. The crowds, now weary but fulfilled, prepared themselves for the closing contests, moments charged with heightened drama where fate would be decided and stories etched forever into the collective memory. The Colosseum held them, a vast cradle of stone and history, as they awaited the last dance beneath the Roman sky. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue that stretched shadows long across the vast expanse of the arena, the Colosseum began to take on a different kind of magic, a twilight glow that softened the rough edges of the day's violence and sharpened the poignancy of every moment. The crowd, though fatigued from hours of spectacle, remained enthralled, their attention undimmed by the length of time spent beneath the open sky. In these fading hours, the rhythm of the games changed subtly but noticeably. The contests grew more deliberate, the fighters more experienced, and the stakes palpably higher. The audience could sense the approaching climax of the day's drama, a crescendo built not only on the skill of combatants, but on the weight of stories unfolding with each clash of sword and shield. Among the spectators, whispers passed like gentle currents, reflections on the bravery witnessed, predictions for the final matches, and musings on the fate of favored gladiators. The mingling of voices created a warm hum that threaded through the stands, a reminder that the Colosseum was as much a gathering place for community as it was a stage for spectacle. As the next pair of gladiators entered the arena, the crowd's focus sharpened to a near silence, broken only by the measured steps of the combatants on the sand. One was a veteran Murmillo, his armor dented and worn, but his gaze steady and resolute. The other, a younger Retiarius, agile and quick, wielded his trident and net with practiced ease. Their contrasting styles promised a battle of strength against speed, experience against youthful daring. The combat began with cautious testing, each fighter probing defenses, seeking weaknesses. The Murmillo's shield raised high, a fortress against the Retiarius' swift jabs, while the lighter Gladiator danced around, his net flicking in graceful arcs meant to ensnare. The crowd watched breathlessly, the tension rising as the contest unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, ferocious yet precise. Cheers erupted with each near miss and successful strike, the spectators' voices swelling in waves that rolled over the stone tiers. Children sat perched on their parents' laps, eyes wide with wonder, while elders offered approving nods, recognizing the skill and heart displayed in the arena. The combatants themselves seemed to draw strength from the crowd, their movements more daring, their resolve sharpened by the collective gaze. At a critical moment, the Retiarius cast his net, a sudden and swift movement that threatened to bind his opponent. The Murmillo responded with a powerful counterstrike, breaking free just in time, sending the crowd into a frenzy of cheers and gasps. The fight's momentum shifted back and forth, each combatant seizing fleeting opportunities, each breath held in suspense. The editor watched intently, aware that his judgment would soon be called upon. The crowd's energy pulsed like a living thing, riding the waves of excitement and tension. The final moments approached, marked by a clash that left both gladiators breathing heavily, blood staining sand and armor alike. Then came the silent signal, the editor's hand raised, the thumb tilted in a decisive gesture that conveyed mercy. The Murmillo lowered his weapon, acknowledging the younger man's valor, while the crowd erupted in applause and cheers that echoed against the ancient stone. The moment was one of shared humanity, respect amid conflict, compassion amid competition. As the combatants left the arena, the atmosphere shifted once more. Vendors moved among the crowd, their calls softer now as evening settled, offering food and drink to those preparing for the final acts. Friends and strangers exchanged stories, laughter, and quiet reflections, their voices weaving a tapestry of connection beneath the darkening sky. The twilight deepened, stars beginning to peek through the fading light, lending the Colosseum a mystical quality. The stone walls seemed to glow faintly, bathed in the silver of moonlight, and the flicker of oil lamps placed around the amphitheater. The scent of night flowers mingled with the lingering aromas of the day, a fragrant reminder of the cycles of life beyond the arena. In this sacred dusk, the final contest carried an added weight, a culmination of hours of shared emotion and spectacle. The crowd leaned forward, their faces illuminated by lamplight and anticipation, ready to witness the concluding chapters of the day's unfolding story. The Colosseum held its breath, the vast space charged with energy and reverence, as the last gladiators prepared to step into the sand. The weight of history pressed lightly on the shoulders of all present, binding them in a moment that was both fleeting and eternal, a testament to courage, endurance, and the unending dance between fate and free will beneath the Roman sky. The night settled fully over Rome, wrapping the Colosseum in a velvety darkness, pierced by the flickering glow of oil lamps strategically placed along the tiers and corridors. The amphitheater, which had pulsed all day with life and sound, now carried a quieter, almost sacred atmosphere. Yet beneath this calm, the energy of the crowd remained alive, a quiet hum of anticipation and reverence vibrating through the stone seats. The spectators, many weary but unwilling to leave, had gathered close to witness the day's final spectacles, moments heavy with significance. These closing contests were often reserved for the most skilled and famed gladiators, their reputations and fates hanging in the balance beneath the vast Roman sky. For the crowd, it was a chance to see the pinnacle of bravery and mastery, to witness the culmination of hours of drama distilled into fierce, final acts. The architecture of the Colosseum enhanced this moment. The darkness softened the harsh lines of the stone, and the flickering lamplight cast dancing shadows that brought an almost otherworldly quality to the arena. Every movement of the gladiators was heightened by the contrast of light and dark, the gleam of armor against the shadows, the flash of steel in the glow, the sudden gasp or cheer punctuated by the night's stillness. The gladiators entered the arena under a spotlight of torchbearers, their faces etched with determination, bodies marked by scars and sweat from battles past. One was a seasoned Murmillo, his heavy shield battered but still formidable, eyes steady and unyielding. The other, a younger Secutor, bore the marks of fewer battles but moved with a confident grace that betrayed skill and preparation. As they faced each other, the crowd leaned in, voices dropping to murmurs, the air thick with expectancy. The fight began slowly, each combatant sizing up the other, testing defenses and probing for weaknesses. Their weapons sang through the night, a metallic symphony that held the crowd spellbound. The Murmillo's steady blows contrasted with the Secutor's swift, calculated strikes, the interplay of offense and defense a testament to the artistry beneath the violence. Throughout the battle, the crowd's emotions ebbed and flowed like tides. Cheers erupted with every successful maneuver. Gasps escaped when either fighter faltered. Children sat wide-eyed, clutching their parents' hands, while elders offered approving nods and whispered prayers for courage and safety. The spectacle was more than a contest. It was a shared experience, a ritual that united spectators across generations and social divides. As the fight intensified, the arena echoed with the sounds of clashing steel and the grunts of exertion. Sweat and blood mingled with the dust kicked up by quick movements, the air thick with tension. Each strike carried weight, each parry a potential turning point. The gladiators, aware of the crowd's gaze and the editor's judgment, pushed themselves to their limits, their bodies a canvas of endurance and will. At a critical moment, the Secutor managed a deft maneuver, forcing the Murmillo onto defensive. The crowd surged with excitement, their voices rising in a crescendo that matched the drama unfolding in the sand. Yet the Murmillo, displaying remarkable resilience, countered swiftly, regaining ground with a powerful strike that silenced the arena for a heartbeat. The editor's eyes narrowed, his hand poised to decide the fate of the fighters. The crowd held its breath, caught in the fragile balance between life and death, mercy and finality. Then, with a measured and deliberate gesture, the editor signaled mercy, sparing the defeated combatant's life. The crowd erupted in a wave of applause and cheers, a celebration not just of survival, but of honor and valor. As the gladiators exited the arena, the mood softened. Spectators whispered among themselves, sharing impressions and speculations. The night, though deepening, was far from over. The final moments of the game still awaited, moments charged with ritual and meaning. The Colosseum seemed to hold its breath, ready to embrace the closing chapters of the day's grand performance. The lamplight flickered gently, casting elongated shadows that danced across the stone. The air was cooler now, carrying the faint scent of night blossoms and distant fires. The crowd, though tired, remained engaged, their collective energy a testament to the enduring power of the spectacle. In these final hours, the Colosseum was not just an arena, but a sacred space, a place where history, culture, and human emotion intertwined beneath the eternal Roman sky. The stories unfolding in the sand were more than contests. They were expressions of courage, identity, and the complex dance between fate and free will. And so, as the night deepened, the crowd awaited the last acts, their hearts and minds attuned to the rhythms of the arena, ready to witness the final echoes of a day steeped in honor, struggle, and the timeless drama of the Colosseum. The night grew deeper, stars peppering the vast Roman sky like scattered jewels, while the Colosseum remained alive with quiet energy. The flickering lamplight played upon the ancient stones, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to dance along the curved tiers and arches. The amphitheater, after hours of thunderous roars and cheers, now held a sacred stillness, a moment suspended between the past and the present. Though many had departed, a dedicated core of spectators remained, drawn by the promise of the day's final acts. Their faces were illuminated softly by oil lamps, eyes bright with anticipation and respect. The long hours spent under the sun and stars had woven a tapestry of shared experience, stories of valor and defeat, of fleeting mercy and enduring honor, that connected all who had gathered. In this twilight hour, the atmosphere shifted from the frenetic excitement of earlier contests to a more profound solemnity. The closing matches were not merely battles, they were symbolic rites, embodiments of ideals revered by Roman society, courage in the face of death, skill honed through discipline, and the complex dance between fate and choice. The spectators felt this deeply, their silence a tribute as much as their cheers had been earlier. The arena itself took on an almost sacred quality. The sandy floor, worn and stained, seemed to hold the echoes of countless footsteps and struggles, a silent witness to human courage and vulnerability. The stone walls, towering and weathered, enclosed the space with a protective embrace, sheltering the stories unfolding within. The next combatants emerged, their steps measured, faces marked by determination and fatigue. One was a Retiarius, lean and agile, his net coiled at his side, trident poised like a predator's claw. His opponent, a heavily armored Secutor, moved with deliberate strength, shield raised and gladius gleaming in the torchlight. The contrast between them was stark, a dance of lightness and heaviness, speed and resilience. The crowd leaned forward collectively, breaths held tight as the two circled, eyes locked in a silent contest of wills before the clash of steel broke the stillness. Each movement was precise, each strike calculated, the tension between offense and defense drawing gasps and cheers. The Retiarius' agility was matched by the Secutor's steadfast defense, their duel a balance of strategy and endurance. The spectators watched not only with their eyes but with their hearts, sensing the deeper meaning in the battle's rhythm. The arena was a stage where mortal struggle mirrored larger truths, the fragility of life, the strength of spirit, the power of choice even amid fate's heavy hand. As the fight progressed, moments of brilliance and near defeat wove together in a narrative both brutal and beautiful. The Retiarius cast his net with swift precision, nearly ensnaring the Secutor, who responded with a powerful shield bash that sent his opponent stumbling. Cheers and gasps erupted from the stands, the crowd swept along by the shifting tides of fortune. At last, the decisive moment arrived, a well-timed thrust, a parry, a stumble. The editor's hand rose slowly, the signal awaited by all. A gesture of mercy was granted, and the crowd's applause swelled in waves, a celebration of survival and valor. The defeated gladiator acknowledged his opponent and the spectators with a humble nod, embodying the respect that framed these deadly contests. As the gladiators left the arena, the night air seemed to settle more deeply. The crowd, now a quiet chorus of whispered conversations and soft laughter, savored the final moments of the games. Friends exchanged stories and reflections, children nestled against their parents, and elders offered blessings to the gods for protection and grace. The Colosseum, under the silver light of the moon, stood as a timeless monument, a place where the raw edges of life met the rituals of culture, where human drama was etched into stone and sand. The spectators, bound by the day's experiences, carried with them a shared memory, a connection that transcended social divides and temporal boundaries. As the night deepened further, the amphitheater emptied slowly, the echoes of the day lingering like a gentle sigh. The Colosseum, silent once more, awaited the return of dawn and the next gathering of souls who would come to witness, to feel, and to remember beneath the eternal Roman sky. With the first light of dawn, the Colosseum stirred once again, its massive stones bathed in the soft, pale glow of early morning. The city of Rome was just beginning to awaken, the distant calls of merchants, the clatter of carts on cobblestones, and the gentle murmur of waking households drifting through the cool air. But within the amphitheater, a different kind of awakening took place. A gathering of souls drawn once more to the timeless ritual of spectacle and story. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh dew mingled with the faint aroma of baked bread and herbs from nearby markets. Early spectators arrived slowly, their faces still shadowed with sleep but brightening with anticipation. The Colosseum, towering and majestic, offered a sanctuary where the day's stories would unfold anew, each moment ripe with possibility. Inside, the stone seating glistened faintly with morning moisture, the rough textures softened by the gentle light. The vastness of the space, its arches and corridors stretching into shadows and light, created an atmosphere both grand and intimate. Spectators moved quietly, finding their places, greeting friends and strangers alike, their voices low but filled with warmth. As the crowd settled, the social dynamics reemerged, the senators and nobles reclaiming their privileged seats near the arena's edge, the equestrians and merchants filling the next tiers, and the common folk ascending to the higher rings. Yet, despite these divisions, a shared excitement united all, an unspoken bond forged by the anticipation of the games. The vendors arrived early, their carts laden with olives, figs, cheeses, and spiced wines. Their calls, though softer than the previous day's clamors, added a gentle rhythm to the awakening Colosseum. Children darted through the aisles, laughter bubbling like a fresh stream, their eagerness a bright contrast to the solemn grandeur of the stone amphitheater. As the sun climbed, casting golden light that warmed the marble and stone, the day's first procession began to form. Musicians took their places, their instruments gleaming, ready to fill the air with the stirring sounds of horns and drums. Gladiators gathered behind the wooden barriers, adjusting armor and weapons, their faces a mixture of resolve and quiet nerves. The crowd rose as one to greet the procession, the pampa, that would lead the combatants into the arena. The rhythmic beat of drums and the blare of horns filled the space, weaving a soundscape that both thrilled and solemnized the moment. The gladiators marched with purpose, their armor catching the sunlight, their movements precise and disciplined. Priests bearing incense and sacred emblems followed, their presence a reminder of the divine favor sought for the day's contests. The crowd's cheers swelled as the emperor or his representative appeared, their presence a potent symbol of imperial power and unity. The pampa was a ritual of grandeur and meaning, a bridge between the divine and the mortal, the political and the personal. Once the procession concluded, the games began. The early contests often featured lesser-known fighters or staged hunts with exotic animals, designed to build anticipation and showcase Rome's dominion over nature. These moments allowed the crowd to settle into the rhythm of the day, their energy rising and falling like the waves of the sea. The arena itself was transformed with fresh sand, swept smooth and ready to absorb the marks of battle. Beneath, the hidden mechanisms hummed quietly, trapdoors and lifts poised to bring forth combatants, beasts, or surprises that would ignite the crowd's imagination and passion. Throughout the morning, the Colosseum filled with a symphony of sounds, the clash of weapons, the murmur of the crowd, the cries of animals, and the call of vendors weaving through the masses. Faces glowed with excitement and concentration. Children watched wide-eyed, elders nodded in appreciation, and friends shared laughter and stories. In these hours, the Colosseum was more than stone and sand. It was a living organism, breathing with the energy of thousands united in the ancient ritual of spectacle and memory. Each moment carried the weight of history, each cheer and gasp a thread woven into the tapestry of Roman life. As the day unfolded, the spectators moved with the shifting sun, seeking shade or warming in the light, their senses alive to the interplay of light and sound, tension and release. The games were a dance of contrasts, brutal yet beautiful, chaotic yet ordered, transient yet timeless. And so the new day at the Colosseum began, a fresh chapter in the endless story of courage, faith, and shared humanity beneath the vast Roman sky. As the morning advanced, the Colosseum's atmosphere thickened with expectation, the vibrant energy of the crowd becoming a tangible presence within the amphitheater's massive stone embrace. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp contrast between sunlit seating and the cooling shadows beneath the vaulted arches. Each ray of light seemed to highlight the eager faces around the arena, their expressions a blend of curiosity, excitement, and reverence. The day's contests unfolded in a carefully choreographed sequence, designed to build anticipation and showcase the diverse spectacles that defined Roman entertainment. The crowd's emotions swelled and subsided in waves, the rhythm dictated not only by the battles themselves, but by the interludes of music, pageantry, and displays of exotic animals that punctuated the day. Among the spectators, conversations wove a rich tapestry of social interaction. Merchants debated gladiators' reputations while sharing morsels of food. Children, wide-eyed and restless, whispered questions to attentive parents. Elders exchanged nods of approval and quiet reflections on past games. The amphitheater was alive with stories both told and untold, stories that transcended the arena to become part of the fabric of Roman life. The architecture of the Colosseum lent its own voice to the experience. The elliptical shape ensured that the sounds of battle, steel striking steel, the grunts and shouts of combatants, the collective roar of the crowd, were amplified and carried effortlessly to every corner. The stone seats, worn smooth by centuries of feet, offered not only physical support, but a connection to generations past who had gathered for the same spectacle. As the midday sun reached its peak, a procession entered the arena, signaling a shift to the more intense phase of the games. Gladiators, now renowned and seasoned, stepped into the sunlight with measured grace. Their armor bore the marks of countless battles, their faces etched with scars and determination. The crowd rose to its feet, the sound swelling into a chorus of cheers and applause that echoed against the ancient stones. The combatants faced each other with a mixture of respect and fierce resolve. The crowd held its breath as the first blows rang out, a clash of metal, a dance of skill and strength. The crowd's energy fed the fighters, their movements sharp and calculated, their endurance pushed to the limit. In the stands, supporters waved banners and shouted encouragements, while others watched in tense silence, hearts pounding with every parry and strike. The spectacle was more than physical contest. It was a story unfolding, a narrative of bravery, sacrifice, and the fragile balance between life and death. Between bouts, the arena transformed once more. Exotic beasts were brought forth, their presence a reminder of Rome's far-reaching power and dominion over wild lands. Lions paced regally, bears lumbered through the sand, and elephants, awe-inspiring in size, made slow, deliberate passages that drew gasps and cheers. These displays allowed the crowd a moment to breathe, to marvel at nature's grandeur, before plunging back into human drama. Vendors continued their steady rounds, their calls blending with the crowd's ebb and flow. Food and drink offered comfort and sustenance, while the shared experience fostered connections between neighbors and strangers alike. The amphitheater became a microcosm of Roman society, diverse yet united, chaotic yet harmonious. As shadows lengthened and the sun began its slow descent, the contest grew more fierce, the stakes higher. The crowd leaned in, eyes gleaming with anticipation and concern. The arena was a place where courage was tested and stories etched into memory, where the lines between life and death blurred beneath the eternal sky. In these moments, the Colosseum was more than stone and sand. It was a living theater of human emotion, a stage where history was made not only by emperors and generals, but by the sweat, blood, and spirit of countless individuals woven into the vast tapestry of Rome. The sun dipped lower, casting the amphitheater in a warm golden light that softened the day's harsh edges. The crowd, weary yet invigorated, prepared for the final acts of the spectacle, their hearts bound together by the shared journey through courage, fate, and the unending dance of light and shadow beneath the Roman sky. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting a warm amber glow over the Colosseum's weathered stones, the crowd settled into a reverent hush, sensing the approach of the day's climactic moments. The shifting light softened the outlines of the towering arches and tiered seating, wrapping the vast amphitheater in a golden embrace that seemed almost to hold time itself still. Spectators, their faces flushed from the day's heat and excitement, leaned forward, eyes fixed on the arena where the final contest would soon begin. This was the moment when skill and fate intertwined most tightly. The battles that would be remembered, whispered in taverns and homes across Rome, their echoes carried far beyond the stone walls. The social fabric of the crowd showed itself in subtle ways. Senators sat upright, their expressions composed but keen, absorbing the spectacle with the practiced eye of men who understood the political weight such games carried. Nearby, merchants and artisans exchanged animated commentary, their hands gesturing emphatically as they debated the fighters' techniques and strategies. Children clung to their parents, faces wide with wonder and a trace of fatigue, their youthful energy mingling with the solemnity of the moment. The arena floor was freshly swept, the sand a pristine canvas, awaiting the impressions of struggle and triumph. Beneath it, the hidden mechanisms lay silent, their workings momentarily forgotten, as the focus turned entirely to the combatants who now prepared to enter the arena. The corridors echoed with the measured footsteps of gladiators clad in armor that gleamed dully in the late afternoon light. The editor took his place, a figure of authority whose decisions shaped life and death. His eyes swept the crowd briefly before resting on the gladiators, his hand poised to render judgment with gestures as potent as the swords that would soon clash. The crowd's energy coalesced into a charged silence, a shared breath held in anticipation. The first combatant stepped forward, a seasoned Murmillo, his shield broad and battle-worn, his helmet crowned with a striking plume. His stance was steady, his eyes reflecting years of training and countless battles. Across the sand, his opponent, a nimble retiarius, flexed his fingers around the shafts of his trident and net, his movements fluid and alert, ready to exploit every opening. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers as the two gladiators met in the center, their weapons raised, the tension between them electric. The Murmillo advanced with measured power, his shield absorbing the first flurry of attacks, while the retiarius darted and weaved, seeking to ensnare his opponent in the delicate mesh of his net. The fight unfolded as a study in contrasts, strength versus agility, defense versus offense. The crowd's voices rose and fell with each exchange, a living soundtrack to the dance of life and death in the sand. Children gasped and laughed, elders nodded in appreciation, and the middle tiers swelled with shouts and encouragements. At a critical moment, the retiarius cast his net with lightning speed, entangling the Murmillo's shield and forcing him off balance. The crowd held its breath, the arena thick with suspense. But the Murmillo, with a powerful heave, broke free and countered with a sweeping strike that drove the retiarius back. Cheers exploded, a thunderous wave of sound that washed over the amphitheater. The combatants circled once more, sweat glistening on their skin, muscles taut with exertion. The editor watched intently, his hand ready to signal the outcome. The crowd waited, suspended between hope and fear, as the final exchanges unfolded in a blur of steel and sand. When the decisive moment arrived, the editor's gesture was clear, a sign of mercy, sparing the retiarius's life. The crowd erupted again, celebrating both the victor's skill and the compassion that tempered the brutal spectacle. The defeated gladiator bowed deeply, acknowledging the crowd and his opponent in a gesture of respect and humility. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across the arena, the crowd began to stir. Voices rose in conversation, children yawned and shifted, and friends exchanged reflections on the day's drama. The Colosseum, momentarily hushed, seemed to hold its breath, the stories of courage and survival lingering in the cool evening air. The amphitheater's stones glowed softly in the fading light, standing as timeless witnesses to the countless dramas played out beneath the vast Roman sky. A place where the fragility and strength of human life intertwined in a ritual as ancient as the empire itself. And so, as night approached, the spectators prepared to carry the memory of the day with them, a shared tapestry of sound, light, and emotion woven deep into the heart of Rome. As the rosy hues of dusk deepened into the cool blues of evening, the Colosseum became a place suspended between worlds, the vibrant energy of the day giving way to a calm tinged with reflection. The crowd, though weary from hours beneath the sun and the roar of the spectacle, remained gathered, their voices softened into gentle murmurs that floated like a lullaby through the vast amphitheater. The fading light played tricks on the eye, turning the rough-hewn stone into a tapestry of shadows and highlights that seemed to breathe with the memories held within. Every arch, every column, every worn step carried the weight of countless stories, of triumph and loss, of courage tested and honor earned. The amphitheater stood as both stage and silent witness, its presence as eternal as the city it watched over. Spectators leaned back in their seats, some closing tired eyes, while others traced the silhouettes of their companions, sharing quiet moments of connection. Families huddled together, whispering tales of the day's finest moments, their voices weaving the fabric of collective memory. Merchants, their voices hushed now, began to pack away their goods, their steps soft against the stone corridors. The air had cooled, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant fires, mingling with the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers from gardens beyond the city walls. It was a sensory tapestry that wrapped the Colosseum in a gentle embrace, softening the harshness of the day's violence and reminding all present of life's delicate balance. In the arena, the sand lay still, marked by the footprints and scars of combat, a silent testament to the drama that had unfolded. The spotlights of torches flickered as attendants made their rounds, casting moving pools of light that danced across the arena floor, turning the space into a stage of shadows and whispers. Among the remaining spectators, conversations took on a tone of reflection. Stories of bravery were recounted with reverence, laughter mingled with sighs, and questions about fate and fortune stirred gentle debates. The shared experience had forged bonds between friends, families, and strangers that transcended the divisions of rank and status. The architecture of the Colosseum seemed to respond, its stones glowing softly in the torchlight, embracing the gathered crowd like a protective cloak. The vastness that had once felt overwhelming now felt intimate, a space where humanity's complexities, its cruelty and kindness, fear and courage, played out beneath the starry sky. As the night deepened, the last of the spectators rose, their movements slow and deliberate, reluctant to break the spell. Footsteps echoed softly in the corridors, blending with the night's ambient sounds, the distant murmur of the city, the call of nocturnal birds, the rustle of wind through nearby trees. For many, the memories of the day's games would linger long after they left the amphitheater. The sights, sounds, and emotions experienced would be carried into dreams, whispered in taverns, and passed down through generations. The Colosseum was not merely a venue, but a vessel of shared human experience, a place where the cycles of life and death, joy and sorrow, played out in endless rhythm. As the final flickers of torchlight dimmed and silence settled over the stones, the Colosseum stood quietly beneath the vast Roman sky, a timeless monument to the enduring spirit of spectacle, memory, and community. It awaited the dawn and the return of new faces, new stories, and the eternal dance of light and shadow that defined its existence. And so, wrapped in the calm embrace of night, the great amphitheater rested, holding within its walls the echoes of a day lived fully, deeply, and together. With the gentle break of dawn, the Colosseum stirred anew, its vast stones bathed in the soft pinks and golds of morning light. The cool air carried the promise of a fresh day, filled with renewed anticipation and the timeless rhythms that had echoed through this ancient amphitheater for generations. The city beyond slowly roused, the distant clatter of carts, the murmurs of awakening markets, and the first songs of birds weaving through the streets. Inside the Colosseum, early spectators trickled in, their footsteps echoing softly against the worn stone corridors. Faces, some still shadowed with sleep, brightened with the excitement of what the day might bring. The amphitheater, immense and imposing, seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the gathering of voices and the swell of energy that would once again transform it from silent monument to vibrant heart of Rome. The fresh morning light revealed details often missed in the heat of the day. The intricate carvings on columns, the subtle texture of weathered stone, the delicate play of shadow and light that gave the space a sense of depth and mystery. Spectators paused to drink in these details, grounding themselves in the rich history that enveloped them. As the tiers began to fill, the social dance resumed. Nobles and senators took their places near the arena, their togas immaculate and faces composed, while merchants and artisans claimed spots in the bustling mid-level sections. The common folk, laughter and chatter rising, settled into the higher seats, their energy infectious and spirited. Across these layers, friendships were renewed and new bonds formed, all tied together by the shared anticipation of the games. Vendors made their way through the growing crowd, their calls bright and inviting. The scents of fresh bread, ripe olives, and spiced wine mingled in the air, tantalizing appetites and offering comfort for the hours ahead. Children darted between rows, their laughter ringing clear, a reminder of the life and vitality that pulsed through the ancient stones. The day's first procession, the Pampa, was a spectacle in itself. Musicians struck up stirring rhythms, their horns and drums filling the amphitheater with sound that seemed to awaken even the oldest stones. Gladiators, clad in polished armor and bearing the marks of countless battles, marched with measured pride and discipline. Priests bearing sacred emblems and incense followed, invoking the gods' favor and blessing the contest to come. The emperor's presence, or that of his appointed representative, added a layer of grandeur and authority. His arrival was met with cheers and deference, a reminder that the games were not merely entertainment, but a display of Rome's power and unity. The crowd's energy surged with his appearance, their voices rising in a chorus of approval and anticipation. As the Pampa concluded, the arena was prepared for the day's contests. Fresh sand was spread and smoothed, ready to absorb the footsteps and blood that would mark the unfolding stories. Hidden mechanisms beneath the floor were ready to bring forth combatants and beasts, promising surprises and thrills. The contest began with a mix of hunts, theatrical displays, and preliminary combats designed to ease the crowd into the rhythm of the day. Each event was carefully chosen to evoke emotion, wonder, fear, admiration, drawing spectators deeper into the shared experience. The crowd's reactions were a symphony of human emotion: cheers, gasps, laughter, and quiet murmurs weaving together in a rich tapestry. Faces shone with excitement, eyes gleamed with curiosity, and hearts beat in time with the unfolding drama. The Colosseum was alive, a living organism breathing in unison with the people who gathered. Throughout the morning, moments of tension and release alternated. Gladiators displayed feats of strength and skill, exotic animals inspired awe and respect, and interludes of music and dance offered grace and beauty amidst the intensity. The rhythms of light and shadow, sound and silence, joy and solemnity blended seamlessly. As the sun climbed higher, the Colosseum became a place suspended in time where past and present converged, where the raw edge of human struggle met the refined rituals of culture and spectacle. The stories played out beneath the wide Roman sky were both immediate and eternal, etched into the hearts of those who bore witness. And so the new day unfolded, each moment a thread in the endless tapestry of courage, fate, and community woven within the Colosseum's ancient stones. As midday approached, the sun stood high above Rome, flooding the Colosseum with bright light that warmed the rough stone and made the sand of the arena shimmer like a sea of tiny golds. The amphitheater, once quiet in the morning hush, now pulsed with a vibrant energy, a chorus of voices, footsteps, and laughter that rose and fell like waves against the ancient walls. The crowd was fully gathered now, a vast mosaic of humanity spread across the tiers. Nobles in pristine togas occupied the lower seats near the arena, their faces calm but attentive, while merchants, artisans, and freedmen packed the middle levels, their animated conversations weaving a lively background hum. Above them, common citizens filled the upper rings, their voices the loudest, their cheers the most fervent. Vendors threaded through the crowd, their calls a rhythmic beat in the complex symphony of sounds. The scent of roasted chestnuts mingled with the sharper tang of garum from nearby stalls, and the sweetness of dried figs and honeyed pastries tempted those seeking a brief respite. Children chased one another through the aisles, their joyous shrieks punctuating the murmur of the crowd. The arena floor was alive with action. Gladiators, each bearing the weight of armor and years of training, prepared for combat, with rituals known only to them and their trainers. Their faces, marked by scars and determination, were illuminated by the unforgiving sun, revealing lines of sweat and grit that told stories of countless battles. The crowd's attention sharpened as the announcer, a herald clad in distinctive garb, raised his voice to proclaim the next contest. The clamoring quieted in an instant, replaced by a focused silence that spoke volumes. Eyes fixed on the arena's entrance, where the combatants would soon appear, the spectators leaned forward, anticipation crackling in the air. A hush fell as the doors parted, and the gladiators stepped into the arena. One was a heavily armored secutor, shield raised and sword gleaming, his steps measured and confident. The other was a lightly clad retiarius, nimble and alert, wielding a trident and weighted net, moving with a fluid grace that contrasted sharply with his opponent's solidity. The two circled each other warily, each waiting for the other to reveal an opening. The crowd was spellbound, their emotions a mirror of the unfolding battle, tense, excited, reverent. Children clutched their parents' hands, elders murmured prayers, strangers exchanged glances charged with collective feeling. The fight was a dance of skill and endurance. The secutor pressed forward with steady force, his shield a moving fortress against the swift attacks of the retiarius, who darted and feinted, seeking to ensnare his adversary in the delicate mesh of his neck. Each clash of steel and parry of weapon was a note in a symphony of human will and physical prowess. The crowd's cheers rose and fell like waves, surging with each near miss and successful strike. The gladiators moved with a mixture of strategy and instinct, their bodies responding to the crowd's energy as much as to each other. The editor, seated in a place of honor, watched intently, his hand ready to signal the outcome. Sweat and sand mixed on the arena floor as the fight wore on, muscles straining, breaths coming faster. At a critical moment, the Retiarius cast his net with precision, momentarily binding the Secutor's shield and forcing him off balance. The crowd gasped, the tension breaking into a crescendo of shouts and applause. But the Secutor's strength prevailed, and with a powerful counterstrike, he regained his footing and pressed the attack. The final moments were a blur of motion and emotion. The editor's hand rose slowly, the decisive gesture granting mercy and life to the defeated combatant. The crowd erupted in celebration, voices blending in a thunderous wave that filled the vast amphitheater. As the gladiators exited the arena, the crowd's energy shifted to reflection and camaraderie. Friends shared opinions and laughter. Children played quietly, and the vendors resumed their rounds, offering sustenance and comfort. The Colosseum, alive with the mingling of ancient stone and human spirit, breathed deeply with the rhythm of the day. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows that stretched across the arena, bathing the amphitheater in warm light. The stories told in sand and sweat lingered in the air, woven into the fabric of Rome's eternal life, a testament to courage, fate, and the enduring power of shared experience beneath the vast sky. As the sun began its gentle descent toward the horizon, the Colosseum's atmosphere shifted once more, settling into a rhythm both calming and electric. The heat of midday gave way to the cooler embrace of late afternoon, the light softening into hues of amber and rose that bathed the ancient stones in a warm, golden glow. The amphitheater, colossal and timeless, seemed to breathe with the collective pulse of the crowd, now quieter yet no less engaged. Spectators shifted in their seats, stretching tired limbs or sharing whispered conversations. Faces reflected a complex blend of exhaustion and exhilaration, the residue of hours spent immersed in spectacle and emotion. Children nestled against their parents, eyelids heavy but minds alight with vivid memories of the day's battles and performances. Elders sat with serene smiles, their eyes reflecting both pride and nostalgia, seasoned by years of witnessing the Colosseum's unfolding dramas. The social tapestry of the audience wove itself tightly in these fading hours. Senators and nobles, their togas slightly disheveled from the day's excitement, exchanged knowing glances and quiet remarks, aware of the subtle political meanings embedded in the games. Merchants and craftsmen, flushed with enthusiasm, debated the prowess of gladiators and the spectacle's highlights, their voices animated but tempered by the approaching evening calm. Among them, freedmen and laborers shared laughter and stories, their collective spirit vibrant and unrestrained. The arena itself, once a stage of relentless motion and clashing steel, now held a serene stillness. The sand bore the impressions of countless footsteps, each mark a silent testament to courage and struggle. The towering walls, glowing softly in the sunset light, seemed to cradle the arena's memory, a stone repository of human triumph and tragedy. As the final contests approached, the crowd's energy subtly heightened. The closing moments of the games carried an almost sacred weight, an understanding that these battles would resonate beyond the immediate, their outcomes etched into the shared history of Rome. The gladiators who stepped forward bore this knowledge, their faces a mix of determination, weariness, and resolve. The editor took his place once more, a figure both revered and feared, whose gestures would decide fates and seal stories. His presence commanded attention, a reminder of the delicate balance between mercy and finality that underscored every contest. The fighters entered the arena under a canopy of fading light, their armor catching the last rays of the sun, casting flickering reflections across the sand. Among them was a Murmillo, his shield scarred but strong, eyes steady beneath his helmet. Opposite him stood a Thraex, lighter armored but no less formidable, wielding his distinctive curved sword and small shield. The crowd fell into a hushed anticipation, the weight of the moment settling like a gentle veil over thousands of souls. The duel began with measured caution, each gladiator testing the other's defenses, seeking the moment to strike. The clash of steel rang clear and sharp, a counterpoint to the soft murmur of the audience. As the battle unfolded, the crowd's collective breath seemed to synchronize with the fighters' movements. The tense pause before a strike, the rush of a successful blow, the graceful evasion of a deadly attack. Each moment was amplified by the shared emotional investment, the unspoken dialogue between combatants and spectators, The fight wove a narrative of endurance and strategy, a vivid dance that transcended mere combat. The Myrmidons' strength met the Thrax's agility in a series of strikes and counters, their skill a testament to years of discipline and sacrifice. The crowd watched with rapt attention, voices rising and falling in waves of encouragement and awe. In a critical exchange, the Thrax exploited a fleeting opening, landing a precise blow that staggered his opponent. The audience gasped, the tension rippling through the stands. Yet the Myrmido recovered swiftly, his resolve hardening, and responded with a powerful strike that shifted the battle's momentum once more. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the editor's hand rose in judgment, a signal of mercy granted. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices a jubilant wave that celebrated survival, skill, and honor. The defeated gladiator bowed deeply, acknowledging both the victor and the spectators, embodying the respect that framed these deadly contests. The fading light gave way to twilight, and the Colosseum's massive arches glowed softly under the emerging stars. Spectators began to rise, their movements slow and deliberate, reluctant to leave the shared space where so many stories had been told. The amphitheater, though momentarily quiet, held the day's echoes close, ready to carry them forward into memory and legend. And so, as night embraced Rome, the great arena stood sentinel, timeless, majestic, and alive with the spirit of countless souls who had gathered to witness courage, fate, and the eternal dance beneath the Roman sky. The night had fully claimed the city, its velvet darkness studded with stars that stretched endlessly across the Roman sky. The Colosseum, immense and solemn under the moon's gentle gaze, seemed to hold a quiet reverence as the last of the day's spectators lingered, reluctant to sever the threads woven through hours of shared experience. The flickering torches cast shifting shadows along the towering walls and arches, breathing life into stone as if the amphitheater itself whispered tales of glory and sacrifice. Though the crowds had thinned, a sacred energy remained, an invisible current binding those who had witnessed the spectacle to one another and to the vast tapestry of history. Voices softened into murmurs, footsteps echoed faintly in the vast corridors, and the rich tapestry of scents, from dust and sweat to roasted meats and fresh bread, lingered like memories in the cool night air. The final contests had left their mark, not only on the sand, but in the hearts of those present. The stories told that day, of courage, endurance, and mercy, were etched into the very stones, carried forward in the murmurs and glances exchanged among the remaining spectators. Families huddled together, sharing quiet reflections, while elders spoke softly of gladiators past, their voices carrying the weight of tradition and time. The amphitheater's vastness seemed to shrink in the intimacy of night. The soaring tiers, once filled with shouting and laughter, now cradled whispered stories and silent awe. The architecture, both monumental and intricate, embraced its visitors, a steadfast witness to the cycles of life and death played out beneath its arches. The cool night air invited contemplation. The crowd's collective breath slowed, each person wrapped in their own thoughts, yet connected by the shared experience of the day. The flickering torchlight illuminated faces, marked by exhilaration and exhaustion, joy and solemnity, binding a diverse assembly into a community of witnesses. Throughout the corridors, the sounds of the city filtered in, distant music, the soft murmur of late-night conversations, the occasional call of a night watchman. These gentle reminders of life beyond the arena blended with the lingering echoes of the games, creating a soundscape of continuity and change. In these final moments, the Colosseum revealed itself not merely as a site of spectacle, but as a sacred space, a living monument to human resilience and connection. It held within its walls the rhythms of countless hearts beating in unison, the stories of countless souls united in witnessing the dance of fate and will beneath the eternal Roman sky. As the last torches sputtered and faded, the amphitheater settled into silence. The cool night air carried the weight of history, of moments lived and remembered, of lives intertwined in a ritual both ancient and immediate. The Colosseum, eternal and unyielding, stood ready to awaken once more, to welcome new voices, new stories, and the timeless embrace of spectacle and memory. And so, beneath the canopy of stars, the great amphitheater rested, its stones whispering softly of glory and grace, waiting patiently for dawn to bring a new day, a new gathering, and the continuation of its endless story. As the first faint light of dawn brushed the horizon, the Colosseum stood poised between night and day, a silent sentinel in the heart of Rome, steeped in centuries of stories and memories. The cool morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying with it the promise of renewal and the endless cycle of spectacle and life that had defined this ancient place for generations. The stones, worn smooth by countless feet, glowed softly in the early light, their surfaces holding the echoes of voices, footsteps, and the clash of steel. Here, where history had been made in blood and bravery, the amphitheater rested not as a relic, but as a living monument, ready once again to embrace the rhythms of human drama. Slowly, the city stirred around it, the murmur of awakening markets, the distant songs of birds, the footsteps of early risers weaving through the streets. Yet within the Colosseum's vast embrace, time seemed to slow, each moment rich with the weight of what had been and what was yet to come. Spectators arrived anew, their faces flushed with anticipation and wonder, their footsteps echoing softly as they took their places. The amphitheater, vast and majestic, welcomed them with open arms, its architecture both awe-inspiring and intimate, a stage set for the unfolding of stories that bridged past and present. The rituals began once more. The procession of gladiators, the beating of drums, the scent of incense carried on the breeze. The crowd, diverse and united, breathed as one, their collective heartbeats syncing with the pulse of the arena. Here, beneath the Roman sky, they were part of something greater, a timeless dance of courage, fate, and community. As the first contests commenced, the air filled with sounds both ancient and immediate. The clash of weapons, the roar of the crowd, the calls of vendors weaving through the masses. Faces shone with excitement, eyes gleamed with curiosity, and spirits soared with the thrill of shared experience. In the Colosseum, every stone, every shadow, every whisper of wind held meaning. It was a place where the fragile beauty of life met the raw edge of mortality, where stories were told not just in words but in the sweat, blood, and breath of those who dared to step into the arena. And so the cycle continued, day after day, generation after generation. The Colosseum, a living tapestry woven from countless threads of human drama. It stood as a testament to the enduring spirit of Rome and its people, a place where past and present converged beneath the vast, eternal sky. In this space, the stories never ended. They flowed like the tides, sometimes fierce and tumultuous, sometimes gentle and reflective, always carrying those who bore witness into the depths of wonder and connection. And with that, the Colosseum awaited the unfolding of new tales, ready to embrace the next gathering of souls, eager to witness, to feel, and to remember beneath the eternal Roman sky.